Today is the 31st of May, 2024, so we're jumping the gun just a little bit for this update video for June. And why are we doing that? Well, we've got a lot of stuff lined up for June 1st, the Saturday, and I didn't want to just pile up videos because some of these events are actually using the YouTube channel. So I always like to begin with three big things. Big thing number one is that I have a new online course that runs for 8 weeks, Rene Descartes' Meditations, Objections, and Replies. That's open for enrollment starting midway through the month on June 15th. So if you want a really great educational opportunity, you might want to check out that online course. Big thing number two, those of you who've been following me know that I was out in Wyoming at Wyoming Stoic Camp as a guest speaker, and that I gave a little talk on Stoicism and grief. So for those, of course, who couldn't make it out to Wyoming, this month I'm going to do an online event where I will present what I presented to the people at the event in Wyoming, and you'll get to ask questions, make comments, ask for clarifications, whatever it is that you want to do. And then big thing number three, we haven't done these for a while because I've been so busy, Storytime with Sadler, where I read one of my favorite short stories, usually from Speculative Fiction, and then we chat about it afterwards. I am going to be doing a really cool and kind of funny story called The Marching Morons by Kornbluth. So, you want to check that out if you're into storytelling or you're into sci-fi. Or dystopia as well, right? If you're into that movie that a lot of people were talking about, and it's become a trope. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it's the one where people have become incredibly stupid in the future. This might be a great story for you because it was written decades earlier. So those are the three big things for this month. All right, so what did the month of May hold? Well, we finished up at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design with our semester. I did have a few students who took incompletes, several of which have completed them, some of which I'm still waiting. We're at the very end point of the period for that. I also, as you know, went off to Wyoming for, I left on a Sunday and got back on a Friday, so nearly a full week for Wyoming Stoic Camp, which takes place up in the mountains at a beautiful little camp called Table in the Wilderness. We saw moose. We took a hike up to 10,000 feet, in the snow. Obviously, we weren't hiking in the snow. We were on roads. And we talked a lot about Stoicism and had a lot of great conversations. Some great learning took place. I presented on Stoicism and grief as one of the guest speakers, and I got to meet a lot of cool people. I've also been teaching my online Aristotle on the Moral Virtues class. The students have been quite engaged, and we've had a great time with that. That's in the Study with Sadler Academy. If you're interested in that, we will teach it again next year. We've got a lot of other great classes coming up, though, this year on Plato and Descartes and Nietzsche and other thinkers. What else did we do? So, Worlds of Speculative Fiction. This month, I went way, way back to a trilogy that I hadn't read since I was a middle schooler, Anne McCaffrey's Harper Hall trilogy, and I found that it held up just as well from the 1980s to today. So it's some great literature. I also did a Philosophers in the Midst of History lecture here at the Frank Weinberg Library in the Milwaukee area. And it was, we always do medieval for May, so it was Peter Abelard and his story with Eloise and the rise of scholasticism, so some cool stuff there. And we got one Wisdom for Life show in. That's the radio show that I do with our local station, River West Radio, with my pal and co-host Dan. And we talked about ways people get mixed up about philosophies like, well, what is Stoicism or what is Epicureanism? I did a lot of work with clients over this last month. You know, my skills are kind of in high demand at this point in time. I worked on some writing projects, some of which you can find in my Medium, some in my Substack, some in other places as well. And I published some episodes of the Mind and Desire podcast, which is sort of a perk for my Substack subscribers. Eventually, episodes do get released to the general public, and I did release a few episodes from April in this last month of May as well. But if you want to get in on them when they're coming out, then you might want to consider becoming a paid subscriber. Sadler's lectures, speaking of podcasts, I did quite a few things. We finished up finally with Immanuel Kant's Prolegomena to Any Future Metaphysics. And then I did a 3-episode series on Plutarch's On Having Many Friends. Plutarch thinks he actually can't. We just finished up with Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, 6 episodes on that. And I did a bunch of one-offs on thinkers who I had, shot videos on before in the past and then didn't get to all the podcast episodes. So Rainer Maria Rilke, William James, one on Franz Kafka's On Parables, Martin Luther King as well on Unfulfilled Hopes, and then 2 episodes on Plato's Gorgias from my anger class that I taught at Marquette for quite a few semesters. Video work, I finally got to something from my existentialism class that I teach at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design on Nishitani's The Self-Overcoming of Nihilism. I did 6 videos on that. You may have seen that we did a number of videos on Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, Book 1. So that's one of the 3 books now done. Now we got to get to Book 2 and Book 3. That'll probably happen later this summer. I got one book review video done on Karen Armstrong's Sacred Nature, which I only gave a qualified approval or recommendation to. I did a Sadler's Quick Takes on a topic that I think is very important, ambiguity in philosophical terms, and not assuming that terms only have one single meaning, which unfortunately a lot of people do and then trip themselves up with. And I also did a Sadler's Stories, basically talking about, when I finished college and the summer right after that, where I was working, what I was doing, where I was living, the fun that I had, kind of a rambling story. And then, of course, there's videos from the events that I did. And I did a video as well, sort of a retrospective on what it was like being at Wyoming Stoic Camp. So links to all of these things you can find below in the show more or video description. And, if you're interested in them, check them out. June is going to be a busy month. So I am teaching online classes with the Study with Sadler Academy. We're finishing up with the Aristotle class. And then, as I mentioned, beginning that René Descartes Meditations class. You see a link to it below. If you're at all interested, check it out. There's a video about it, and you can see whether it is for you. It's going to be a really great learning experience, going deep into a absolutely centrally influential work of modern philosophy, the Meditations. And then we'll also look at objections other philosophers made and Descartes' replies. So this is a really valuable opportunity to study with me. People often are saying, I wish I could take classes with you. Well, you actually can. So that'll be starting on the 15th. But coming back, tomorrow, the 1st of June, we have our usual Ask Me Anything session. And so, that's exactly what it sounds like. You can show up and ask me whatever it is that you want. You just got to be civil to the other participants. Every once in a while we get somebody who's being racist or acting like a jerk in some other way, and we got to boot them out. But so long as you're not doing that, you can ask me about advice. You can ask me about philosophical thinkers. You can ask me about heavy metal, which sometimes people do, or other things as well. And then following that at 2 p.m., all of this is, by the way, Central Time, so you want to make sure that you get your time zone right. We have Philosophy Chat for Patreon supporters, and this is a more intimate connection. It's video conferencing, and you get to ask me, more in-depth questions than you would get to in the AMA, where I'm fielding a whole bunch of them. And sometimes we have some really great chats in these philosophy chats. So if that's something you're interested in, you might consider becoming a Patreon supporter, because that's one of the perks that people get at a certain level. Later on the 6th, and so that's a Thursday, we're going to start doing events not just on Saturdays, but on Thursdays as well. On the 6th at noon Central Time, I am going to present to anybody who's interested, anybody who wants to show up, what it was that I talked about with respect to Stoicism at the Wyoming Stoic Camp. So we're going to talk about grief, the feeling of loss, whether you should cry or not, all those sorts of things. By the way, Seneca might surprise you. He says it would be inhuman for you not to express grief. So Stoicism isn't always totally against showing emotion or anything like that. So if you want to know more about that, you can find the link below, and it's going to be a great event coming up. On the 8th, we have Worlds of Speculative Fiction, and we will be looking at a fairly recent trilogy, the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff VanderMeer, some kind of new weird stuff. It's reminding me a lot of Ballard and of Legati, but it's a little bit more sci-fi-ish as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's at noon. We start with a video premiere, and then we meet for a Zoom video conference. On the 13th, at noon, I'll be doing that long-awaited self-directed study video premiere. This time it's going to be about how to productively study the works of Thomas Aquinas. So I know people have been waiting for that for quite a while. It's finally going to be here. Now, there's some other things that are going to be happening that I'm going to tell you about that, you could get in on them if you wanted to. So on the 15th, which is a Saturday, by the way, the same Saturday that the René Descartes class begins, you could definitely get in on that if you want to. I will be going to a professional conference virtually that I presented at last year. That is the APPA annual conference. That's the American Philosophical Practitioners Association, the society through which I'm certified as a philosophical counselor, which, by the way, this is going to be my 10th year of actually doing that. So that's kind of cool. I need to do something like a retrospective about that, I think. So I'm going to be at that all day long, kind of meeting with colleagues, seeing what they have to present and say, and I'm sure it's going to be great. Then on the 18th, I'm going to be giving a guest lecture in a colleague's class about, it's a very interesting class, philosophy and heavy metal. That's what the class is. Can you imagine getting to teach a whole academic class like that? And I'm going to be talking about the origins of heavy metal and how we classify it and different ways of understanding what metal or heavy metal mean. So it's going to be a really interesting experience. I'll see if I can record it, possibly. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. And then on the 19th through the 21st here in Milwaukee, I'm going to be at the Aristotle and the Aristotelian Tradition Conference down the road at Marquette University. This year I'm not presenting. I might be like called upon to chair a panel or something like that, but we don't know yet. But I always love going to these conferences. It's a great opportunity for me to like learn about what other people are researching, to have conversations with colleagues, and just kind of catch up on what's going on in the academic world. On the 22nd at noon, I'll be doing the Understanding Anger 2.0 session. We are going to concentrate on Seneca's On Anger, Book 1. And actually the next couple months, we're going to do Book 2 and Book 3, and then we're going to look at other Stoics as well. So we're resuming that series, which is great. On the 27th, we're resuming that other series that I was telling you about, the Storytime with Sadler, where basically I just read one of my favorite stories in somewhat of a dramatic way, and then we have some chat afterwards about it. I'll be streaming live, and it's going to be Kornbluth's The Marching Morons, which is a very cool story. Idiocracy, that. Now it comes to me. That's the one that resembles this story, except that Kornbluth's The Marching Morons, that's the archetype. That's the original for it. Then on the 29th, Scott Trulli and I will be doing another classic metal class. And you may have seen in social media me putting some stuff out there about this. We're going to be looking again at what makes great or best albums the best. And we're doing a different sample set this time. We're looking at LA bands from the late 70s, early 80s. So Van Halen, Quiet Riot, Rat, Motley Crue, Wasp, and Dokken. And we're looking at what like ordinary people think is the best, metal fans, and what the critics think are the best, and what are the criteria for this. And we'll, also perhaps do a little bit of research to see what the band members themselves would say is the best. So that's a lot of different events coming up, a lot of cool stuff happening this month. That's just the half of it. I'll be doing more Mind and Desire podcast episodes for my Substack paid subscribers. Eventually, those do get released, as I mentioned. And then Sadler's Lectures podcast, you can expect to see more on Plutarch. I'll be looking at his famous work, How to Tell a Flatterer from a Friend. We'll also finish up with Albert Camus. I did some videos on him a while back, converting all those to podcast episodes on the myth of Sisyphus. We've got some on Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks. And then, provided we have the time, we're going to start doing podcast episodes on Ursula K. Le Guin's really, really central book in the Earthsea series, Tehanu, which is quite different from the earlier Earthsea trilogy. Videos. Okay, last month I said I would do more book reviews. I only got one done last month. Well, we'll get more done. I'm aiming for at least one a week because I do have a lot of books to review and people keep sending them to me and I need to get to them. So you can probably expect to see quite a few book reviews coming out in the Sadler's Honest Book Reviews series. I've got a couple Intro to Philosophy videos that I did originally for an online class for Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design that I'm going to be releasing as well. And then, I'll probably do some Sadler telling stories videos, some personal things, some quick takes. We'll have some Ideas That Matter interviews. Got some interesting guests coming up for that. And there's two other things that I'm going to be doing that you may or may not get excited about. I'm thinking they're pretty cool. So I've been meaning for a long time to do sort of like reviews, online reviews of non-alcoholic beers that I think are particularly worth checking out. I've got them all lined up. It's just a matter of figuring out where and when I'm going to shoot these and how I'm going to talk about it. So that's something I'm going to get to this month. And then this is the one that people might get really excited about. Speculative Fiction, Speculative Fiction Studies. I have already shot over half of these. So I am producing videos, a whole series on H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. So those will be coming out in the coming week, and you should probably get a kick out of that. It's been really fun revisiting that story. I might do more Lovecraft down the line, but for now, that's what we're doing. So if you're interested in any of these events or matters or any of these sorts of things, the links are below. You can check them out. And hope you have a great month, and that you whatever you're doing with philosophy or other related matters, that you have good studies. And I will see you at some of these online events, perhaps maybe even in the Descartes class that's starting on June 15th.